Hey, greetings from the Fortress of Solitude, located deep within the American International House of Pancakes. Hi, I am your host, Chad White. These are tips for the broke-ass musician that I, with any luck, will be able to post several over the next several weeks. What makes a broke-ass musician a broke-ass musician? Well, there can be several things. Maybe you're still a kid living at home. Maybe you're in college and you got a part-time job. You got to pay your stinking bills and you got to buy books. God knows what books are going for. You're married. You got kids. You got a budget. Your wife still encourages, or your husband still encourages you, but where's the money? You know, your kids need books. Your kids need braces. Dogs, dog got poisoned. You got to get something to, make the dog better. Whatever. These are all the things that make you broke-ass. I am a broke-ass musician. I worked in IT for several years, burned out, combination of medical and personal reasons, no big thing there. I am now a broke-ass musician. But I learned how to make these things work for you. And by these things, I meant deals. Looking for stuff where you're going to get plenty of return out of it. Stuff where if you buy it used, use it for a few years, and you can sell it for what you paid for, maybe even more. I'm going to go ahead and put this on pause for a moment, see if I know what I'm doing here. And we're going to start today with broke-ass musician guitars. Cheap, broke-ass musician guitars. There are a lot of them out there that are surprisingly good values. When I started playing in the mid-'70s, Japanese guitars, for the most part, were crap. There were some of the Grecos, some of the early Arias, excuse me, and of course the lawsuit era Ibanez. Those are terrific. Then you've got horrible baseball bat neck knockoffs of the V Explorer, all sorts of crappy guitars out there, but that's all there was. My first electric guitar spent real money on was an Ibanez lawsuit Strat. Got it for $90 in a case of Miller. Those suckers go for considerably more now, but that's what I had to work with. There again, though, get the best you can for your money. I'm going to put this on hold. We're going to see what we got for you. And I'm back. Okay. What we're thinking of here are ways to get the most guitar for the least amount of money. There are several brands that allow you to do something like this. There's Ibanez. God knows how many Ibanez models there are that fall into this category. And by that, I mean under $200. BC Rich. I've never been a fan of BC Rich overall. Their American stuff's hard to find. The Japanese stuff's hard to find. The stuff coming out of China was awful. Just embarrassingly bad. Again, however, you got examples of how things are getting better. It looks like BC Rich has shifted at least some of its manufacture from China to Indonesia. I'll tell you right now, Indonesian-made guitars are terrific. The order of quality that I would normally think would be, depending on my mood, either a USA or Japan top quality. Switch them around depending on my mood. That's followed by Canadian. That is followed by Korean. The Koreans have been making awesome electric guitars for at least 20 years. I used to have a KMD knockoff of an American-made, Fat Stray configuration, Charvel Jackson, made in, I believe it was made in Texas. But my cheap little $75 KMD knockoff was a better guitar. It played better, weighed less. I was more likely to use it on stage. I got it for $60, played it for several years, sold it for $75. Some kid got the deal of a lifetime. Let's get back on topic. BC Rich for starters. Now this baby, this is a Warlock. Like I said, I'm not a big fan of them. I think you have some good guitars. Doesn't have that devil's horn headstock that a lot of cheap BC Riches have. This is actually more reminiscent of the old NJ series headstocks. Those were actually not made in New Jersey. NJ, I don't remember the name of the factory. It started with an N, and the J, I believe, is for Japan. These babies list for $340. Here's a secret. Nobody sells these things for $340. Street price on these suckers tends to be $199. I've found these used for less than $125. The frets are good. Pretty sure the pickups are ceramic, but they're good. I ran them through my AC30, which is directly behind me. Sorry, folks. See? AC30 and a couple of pedals. I don't know, MXR, microamp, stuff like that. The whole thing is, this is cheap. This sounds good. Excellent intonation, surprisingly so. Okay, you can't hear it. I'm making a point, though. The point, and I do have one, is that you can buy a good, cheap BC Rich. Not Chinese, Indonesian. Buy used whenever possible. All right, I'm going to put it on hold again. We're going to switch guitars. And we're back. We're going to talk about Squiers for a moment here. Squier is... Ooh, nice glare. Squier is Fender's bargain brand. It's kind of hit and miss. Some Squiers are terrible. I never cared for the Affinity series. Some are terrific. I mean, terrific bargains. I picked this sucker up at Guitar Center several years ago. It's the Squier Bullet. Not Chinese, made in Indonesia. Here's a good way to tell if a Squier is made in Indonesia. You're going to find a skunk stripe on the back of most Indonesian most Indonesian Squier necks. It is not a real one, I'm positive. It is, in fact, I'm sure it's just cosmetic. For the higher end ones, the classic, with a classic vibe, a lot of those are made in China. Killer bargains. I haven't seen a lot of those used, so I don't know what they go for. This is Indonesian. This is a Squier Bullet, hardtail. I believe it's a 7/8 scale Stratocaster. Cheap, cheap machines, cheap pickups, cheap knobs, but it sounds good. Sounds good. I bought this sucker for $90, brand new, and I've seen these used for less than $75. Woof. Matter of fact, the Squier series, the standard series, I should say. Those were out there for several years. I've had a Squier standard Stratocaster, had the block bridge. Woof, nice. I don't think I paid even $125 for it. I had two Squier standard Telecasters, both of which were fantastic. Both had, I think they call it the Honey Blonde. It's a really thin finish. You can see the wood. They both had the skunk stripe on the back of the neck. This one, by the way, does not, but if you look up here, it's going to say made in Indonesia. That's what you're looking for. That's what I would suggest. Fender is now putting out a new Bullet series. They're Bullet Stratocasters. I believe those are made in Indonesia. I have not checked. The workmanship on those does not look very good. However, for the money, not bad. I've seen them for as low as $100 new. For that same $100 though, you can do better. For $100, you can get your hand on a used standard. Definitely worth it. I went to a pawn shop in Midtown Tucson, not even 2 months ago. They had a Squier standard Stratocaster. Fantastic guitar. Killer tremolo, good everything. $65. 65 friggin' bucks. Now what that tells me is that somebody was desperate enough to get rid of a guitar that they thought they could use, they liked, maybe they didn't pay much for it, maybe they got it used, excuse me. But if they're selling it for 65, I can't imagine the guy who sold it got more than 20 bucks for it. Maybe 35 or 40 bucks in trade. I doubt even that. It's a screaming deal. It is a screaming deal. Another good example, if you want to go towards Fenders, they have Telecasters and Stratocasters made in Mexico, and Sonata, I believe. I've called them Mexicasters for years. They're great guitars. I picked up one for $175, Squier standard, Fender Mexican standard Strat. $175 at a pawn shop up in northern Arizona. Came with a gig bag. Fantastic. Just the quality was extremely good. And I got it for less than $200 out the door. That's a screaming deal. That's something a broke-ass musician can relate to. All right. Let me go ahead and switch here. And we're back again. This time out, I want to talk a little about Epiphones. Epiphone was, I guess you call it a competitor of Gibson's up until I believe the late, well, maybe the mid to late 60s. I'm not entirely sure. Matter of fact, Les Paul was allowed access to the Epiphone factory after closing hours. That is where he designed the Log, the first, for lack of a better term, first solid body electric guitar, what would be considered the modern electric guitar. Gibson bought them, and they became pretty much their low-end stuff, their low-end models. They made them in the States until I'm thinking late 70s. They switched production to Japan, then Korea, then China, and they're starting to move stuff gradually to Indonesia. Now, why am I holding a Gibson Melody Maker and I'm talking about Epiphones? Because we're talking about broke-ass deals. That and the only Epiphone I have is a double neck, which I got cheap, screaming deal cheap, but it's kind of clunky and it's not really adding up to anything. If you're buying an Epiphone, if you're looking into it, the Epiphone SG Special, the Epiphone LP, Les Paul Special, more or less, and the Epiphone Junior. Let me give you a little bit of information. The SG is exactly what it sounds like. It's a low-budget body, decent pickups. I believe I've seen some that look like they are they have P90s. Sorry about the stammering there. Not bad, all things considered. The LP specials, bolt-on neck, just like the SG, and the Junior for that matter. The early ones, at least, had Alnico pickups. That's aluminum, nickel, cobalt, and some sort of alloy. Makes for good speakers, makes for good pickups. Those were made in Korea. Screaming deal. Good guitar. I've given a couple of them to friends. Found them for deals. I've seen those going for under 100 used. And not much more new. The Junior is a single humbucker. Those, to my knowledge, are all made in China. I don't care for them. Humbucker's lousy. I lost my place for a moment. Oh yeah. The Epiphone series, as you go further up the ladder, you can still find some screaming deals. The Epiphone Dot, which is a low-budget version of the revered ES335. I have seen those going for $125. If you get the studio version, which is just, it's kind of like this. It's got a thin finish. It's more oil than enamel. I have seen those going for just over $125 for a semi-hollow body, and it's not made in China. Problem I got with China, it's not a political thing, although it used to be. It's just quality. It's just quality. A lot of Chinese stuff is getting better, but it's taking its sweet time. That's why I'm always saying, actually, you kind of have a three-way tie. You got America, you got Japan, you got Canada. All killer, for the most part, good value. Then you got Korea, once again, good value. Indonesia, value. Good quality, too. China, hit and miss. It's more a matter of quality than anything else. Now, you can also, when you're looking at Epiphones, look for the Les Pauls. I got my hands on a Les Paul Standard. Killer sunburst finish, although I believe it's just a veneer. Killer maple top. And I got it for $199, including a case. Screaming deal. That's not the only deal out there. There are lots of Epiphones out there with set necks like this baby right here. I've seen obviously the Les Pauls. I have seen Explorers. Woof, those are good. Those are not cheap. But if you can find an Epiphone Explorer, you're still looking at under $5. Not bad, but still well beyond what I'm talking about here. Excuse me, got a little bit of schmutz here. Okay, we're good. Okay, now we're going to talk about possibly the most underrated guitars in the history of everything, and by that I mean Peavey's. Peavey's taken a lot of crap over the years because the butt ugly logo, the fact that until recently, and by that I mean the last 15 years or so, they weren't putting out stuff that was, I guess, trendy. I'd say up until Eddie Van Halen, the 5150 combo, which actually was pretty good. I'm much more of a straight combo guy. The only amp head combos I ever had were an old Fender Bassman 10, which I ran through an old Peavey 215 cabinet. Killer sound. And the other one I had after that was a Vox Valtronics, first generation combo and head, stereo, 120 watts. It was a beautiful wall, but it was a damn fridge to lug around. That's why I switched to combos. We'll talk about amps for the broadcast musician later. Sorry about the tangent. This is a Peavey T40. Designed in the late 70s, released to the public in 1979. I've got what is either a factory second or a prototype made for an employee. Most likely a factory second, but the sound is flawless. It looks good, and it's cheap. It was cheap. Here's how it went down. My brother, over the course of a couple of weeks, found two PAF, in other words, patent applied for pickups. One for $100, which is just obscene, and one for $400. Now, they were both in about equal condition. One had a slightly better case, and obviously this one was a factory second, although I can't tell you how. So what we did was we split it down the middle. Mick didn't tell me which was the $100 one, which was the $400 one. I gave him $250. We both ended up with monsters. Now, this is not the only American-made Peavey that you can get a deal on. There's the Predator and the Falcon, both of which are Strat knockoffs. The tremolos can be a little lightweight on them, but they're terrific. The Generation, and I'm going to say, I believe the Patriot they're both Telecaster types. Both bolt on necks, by the way. Then they have a bunch of pointy guitars. That's where the Mantis and the Patriot were both Peavey designs from the 80s. They got laughed out like you would not believe. They're a little bit goofy to look at, but oddly enough, like a Flying V, like a Gibson Modern, like an Explorer, they look goofy, but they're very comfortable to play. The pickups were good. Now, those I've seen going for under $150 just because people are starting to catch on that this was an American guitar from the 80s. A 30, 35-year-old electric guitar made in the States, built like a rock. Or, the other end, the T-Series. Like I said, this came out in 79. The T40 bass, which is probably my favorite production bass of all time. And I've got a Fender Jazz bass and an ESP fretless with just an array of American, Japanese, and German parts. Fantastic. But the T40, I believe, trumps them all. Problem I have with this, and the same problem I have with the T40 Solid Ash. It's been said that you can make these suckers sound like a Les Paul and like a Strat and like a Telecaster, which works out beautifully because it weighs about as much as the three of them combined. Okay, sorry about that. There were also some lower end ones, the T20, the T30. There was the T27, which is a lighter weight body and 3 single coil pickups. There was even the T15, a short scale, that originally came with a case that had a 10-watt amp, the Peavey Decade, which I also use. I owned that as a little combo amp. In retrospect, it probably sounded terrible, but it was terrific at the time, because that's all I needed. Let me see. I'm looking over my list here. Oh, Danelectro. Danelectro, people. Let me get a the skinny about Danelectro. Danelectro puts out a cheaply made guitar with a killer neck, good frets, those beautiful lipstick pickups. I can't say enough about them. I don't know exactly what the difference is between them and, let's say, a P90 or even a Strat or a Telecaster pickup, but it's there. I can hear something. Killer stuff. Now, hang on. First, refreshing the word for our good friends that make alcohol. Okay, I'm back. Okay, now I'm back. Danelectro has switched manufacturing a few times. Made in the States, of course. Then they started making them in Korea. To the best of my knowledge, there are no Japanese Danelectros. Now, I used to have it was called the 59U2. It was single cutaway. The shape was a little more like a Les Paul than a Telecaster, but in the shape I saw elements of both. Lipstick pickups, of course, and it was a decent guitar. It had a wooden bridge, which I did not like, but the intonation was pretty good. I picked that sucker up for $100, and I got $130 for it when I sold it. Screaming deal. The guy who I sold it to got a screaming deal too. Everybody's happy, and I made $30 in the process. There's also the 59DC. I believe it's still called the 59DC. It's the double cutaway. It's the one that is associated with Jimmy Page. I've never seen him live, but I've seen concert footage with Led Zeppelin. I believe with the Black Crowes as well, where he puts that in A tuning for "In My Time of Dying," in Dadgad for I want to say Cashmere. I'm not entirely sure about that. Killer sound. They also put out about 15 years ago the Dano Blaster series. This was, there was a bass, there was a guitar, there was a baritone guitar, and there was a 12 string. Now the baritone and 12 string, I believe, had hardtails. The regular guitar had a tremolo, lightweight, cheap knobs. I didn't care for the knobs, but they had built-in effects. Now, I had the Innuendo 12 string. That was the high end. It had a built-in distortion, had a built-in, just a quick slapback. I couldn't adjust it. It had a tremolo when you could control the speed with a knob, and it had a beautiful chorus. You could run the sucker out stereo. Fantastic. The distortion wasn't great, but you were expected to use your tone controls and the volume to get what you need out of the pedal. And it did work. I loved the 12 string. I sold it. Well, actually, I traded it for a high-end Samick 12 string. It's more or less a 12 string Les Paul. They're out there. They are out there. You can probably get a Dano Blaster for less than $150. Maybe less than that. I don't know. I'd love to get my hands on my Dano Blaster 12 string, but it's okay if I never see it again. And I'm back. Schmutz, sorry. Okay, I'll cover this later on future installments of Tips for the Broadcast Musician. But I want to close off with, how do you get these deals? How do you find them? How do you get these cheap? Craigslist is a beautiful place to look. Fantastic. eBay. Secondhand stores, surprisingly enough, will sometimes have one. Bookstores. There's a chain in the Tucson area called Bookman's. You can actually buy books, vinyl, CDs, DVDs, VHS tapes. I've actually seen a few cassettes. And they're starting to sell musical instruments. You can find the occasional screaming deal there. Pawn shops, especially toward the end of the month. Pawn shops. A lot of places, you can start haggling right away. My advice is, unless it's already a screaming deal, ask for 30% below the asking price. Let them talk you up to 20% under the asking price. If you believe it's a screaming deal, offer 20% underneath the list price. And if they don't give you much of a deal on that, you're okay, because it was going to be a screaming deal anyway. They're especially good for small amps and for pedals. I find amazing amounts of pedals, dozens of pedals, dozens and dozens over the years, cheap at pawn shops. Swap meets occasionally. Now, here's something else you'll need to know real quick, and I'll go over this again later as well. People will claim, oh, this sold for $100 on eBay, or I saw one for $150 on eBay. What you want to do is this. Do a search on eBay. Search for the model number or the name of what you're looking to buy. Find it. Limit the search to completed items only. What this means is only completed auctions. If it's sold, you'll see the selling price in green. If it didn't sell, you'll see the asking price in red. What you want to do is this. Look for the green ones. That way if somebody says, oh, I saw one on eBay for $150. Yeah, but I saw 3 that didn't even sell for $65. I'll offer you $70. What do you say? Here's the situation. You're not made of money. Don't act like you are. All right. I'm going to stop here for now. What I'm going to do later on, I'm going to give a quick overview on cheap pedals, cheap amps, even cheap keyboard setups. Stuff where if you got your hands on a cheap laptop and a couple of USB cables, you can do miracles, and I'm not exaggerating. All right. Well, my voice is hoarse. You're bored stiff. I appreciate your time. Once again, my name is Chad White. I am here in the Fortress of Solitude, located deep within the Amnesty International House of Pancakes, and this has been Tips for the Broadcast Musician. Later.